I have tried and failed many different ways of organizing a gradient of yarn for sweaters. I really like to work in these gradients because they're a really nice way to work with color in a way that's really pleasing. It keeps things visually organized so that your brain doesn't have to do as much work when things are organized in a gradient. It just flows really nicely. I've tried all these different ways of keeping the yarns organized. Sometimes I will just leave everything out on a countertop in this order, and then I'll just pull from that as I go. Sometimes I'll put them in plastic bags that are labeled, but obviously that uses plastic and that's not so desirable. And then everything gets jumbled together. The other part of it is that before, when I was doing these scrappy sweaters, I would have a background color, which is usually the darkest color, the navy blue for the sweater that I'm wearing, or this dark purple for the other sweater. Those would be the background color. So I'd have a lot of that, and then I would have these progressions of the other colors, and those worked really nicely. In this instance, I have lots of small balls of yarn, and my goal here is to not buy or spin any more yarn that I already have, because this is enough to make a sweater. But with that comes a challenge, which is how do you organize it across the entire sweater? You've got the neckline, you've got the body of the sweater, you've got the sleeves. And then the hem. And how am I going to organize it so that either it's cohesive or everything's sort of wherever it wants to go? Those are the two options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weigh each color. I'm going to write down what I've got of each color. I'm going to write that down in my notebook, and then I'm also going to tie one of these shipping labels onto that yarn so that I know where it is. I'm going to number it, and we're going to see how that works as an organization system. So if you have ever done 2-at-a-time socks, this is kind of the concept where you can make sure that you are using exactly the same amount in each sock. I'm setting myself up for this. I don't know if I'm going to end up going with it, but let's start organized, and then we can be chaos pandas later if we want to. So 84 grams. COVID sucks, y'all. Clearly, I was vaccinated, and I am on Paxlovid, which does seem to be helping significantly. So if you're not vaccinated, guys, I mean, this is brutal, and I am vaccinated. So go get vaccinated. I don't care what your politics are. Just take care of yourself. Take care of your friends. Take care of your neighbors. Get vaccinated. These two purples, once they start changing in hue significantly, they're giving me a tough time with value. I might end up about this one, because I think the rest of them will behave. I think I had that problem before where one was so significantly different that it was hard to work with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so there's 11 or 12 in that gradation. I'm gonna keep it in there just for now, and then I'll decide what to do with it later. So another thing that I really like that I've got going on here is that there's 9 blues, 11 or 12 purples, depending on how we count it, and 8 greens. And what that does for me is that it gives me a different number of everything, and so as I move between colors, it's not always going to be constant. You're not always going to be switching colors at the same time, and that gives a nice flow to things. It makes it really kind of dynamic. I really like how that tends to work out for me when I'm working with color work. So I am happy about how that happened to work out. So that's cool. Okay, so I definitely have the most of purple number 5 at 180 grams. It's entirely possible that I intended that to be my background color at one point. And it does sort of present a challenge with there being a lot of that value in the middle. If I'm trying to do like an even progression of colors, what I could do is that could be the edging color for the neckline and the hems. That's actually not the worst plan, because these two are pretty close in value. So it could be a nice bridge from this to go to that, and that would work fine. On my first scrappy sweater that I made, I ended up buying more yarn than I used, which is a rookie mistake. Zero judgment, I've done it. But really what I'm trying to do here is really work down my stash, make a sweater that I'm going to enjoy wearing, and use up hand spun. All of this is hand spun. So it's, it's special and it's nice to have around, but it's better to be something I can wear than just something that is stuck in the closet. This one's, it can't really make up its mind whether it wants to be 22 or 23. So when it's like that, I'm going to gonna round down just in case. And then this one, whether I end up using it or not, I did notice when I was knitting with it that it is significantly thinner than some of the other colors. So I'm probably going to hold it double. And so I'm going to take half of the weight of it. So it says it's 27 grams. We're going to call it 13 grams. The goal here is really not so much being precise about how much yarn we have, but kind of knowing roughly what there is. So this one's not even registering on the scale. We're gonna call it 1 gram. I don't think that's right though. I think it's probably 5 grams. Let's see. That one's 8. Yeah, it's 5 grams. When you're using a kitchen scale, it's not gonna be able to pick up on those lighter weights of yarn because it's expecting you to be working in larger quantities. So when you're getting down to those single digits of grams, you're really not going to be as accurate. Some of these colors are a little bit tricky. Like this could be 2 colors. I think that is 2 colors actually. And it's not, is it this color? No, because this one has more gray in it. I remember this being like a whole thing. One of the things that I'm working on in my fiber blending is getting these really smooth gradients. And so I really like it when a knitted garment has these super, super smooth gradients and you can't necessarily tell the progression from one color to the next. It creates this really, really smooth, beautiful appearance in the knitted fabric. And it's something that I really love about hand spinning because few dye houses are able to give you that progression in all of the colors of yarn that you'd like to have. Usually there's a very clear step between each color, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can still achieve really interesting gradated effects with that. But when I'm blending my fiber, that's something that really sets my hand spun apart from the fiber or the yarn that you can get at the store. How do you get those really smooth progressions? For me, it's a lot of trial and error. Every now and then I sort of wonder, is there a formula out there? But then different colors have different mixing strengths. If you've ever worked with paint, you'll know that certain colors just like take over other colors. So some of these colors are really close, and then like there might be a big jump, especially when you get into the lighter colors. That can be an issue. And that has a lot to do with how our eyes perceive color. I mentioned earlier that these two were giving me a little bit of difficulty on the value. They are very different in hue. One is much more gray and one is much more saturated than the other. A real quick tip, if you're having trouble with that, put your phone's filter onto the mono or the black and white, and it will show you that this one is indeed a little bit darker than that one, and that can help you ascertain the value of colors. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through my sketchbook where I keep some sweater design ideas. I'm going to look through the internet. I'm going to look through the knitting books that I have, kind of see, is there a pattern already written that I like, or am I going to make up my own pattern? So that's next. Stay tuned. But first, more tea.